So, Ulandi, and welcome back to another episode of Where is the Lamb Sauce? Now, today I'm joined by my first sports-related guest. I'm joined by Ivar from Bad Barca Opinions on Instagram. Thanks for coming on today, Ivar.
Thank you so much for having me. Very
No
excited to be here.
worries. We finally managed to organize an interview for today, so I'm really, really excited to see how it goes on. And before we get into Barcelona and everything, I just want to ask you, when did you first fall in love with Barcelona?
Good question. I think it was back in like 2009 or
Hmm.
something like that. Because I remember at school, everyone were Manchester United fans. They
Yeah.
supported Manchester United or a team in England. It was mostly Manchester United. But that club never really spoke to me. And I wasn't that interested in football back then either. But I was at my cousin's house, and I remember there was a Barca game in the background. I think they were playing Villarreal or something like that. And the type of football they played, it spoke to me. The simplicity, the way they passed, the way they moved. It was just what I needed and what I saw in
Hmm.
football. It spoke to me in a way. And since then, despite receiving some criticism at school, I supported them.
I get you. So I guess you could say that you fell in love with the style of Barcelona, that tiki-taka style back then with Guardiola. Was there a certain player to you that stuck out back in the day?
Obviously, it was Messi. You also had
Hmm.
Xavi and Iniesta. But one player
Yeah.
that I kind of like related more to was Pedro because he was hardworking. He
Hmm.
was he wasn't the biggest star, but he always did his best. And in the end, he became quite important as well. Scored in many important games. He did an incredible job for a team filled with superstars. So I wasn't the best at football. I was okay. So I think in a way, I could relate to him.
I get you. I think that Pedro is probably one of the most underrated football players of that time. People always like to talk about Thomas Müller, which I completely understand. But if we're talking about, I guess, somebody who's more underrated that people don't talk about as much, I think that Pedro has to be part of that conversation. I mean, he still plays football now, right?
He's 38. I think he's the oldest goal scorer for Lazio.
Yeah, for Lazio, and he's still balling around there. So I mean, crazy stuff that he's had such crazy longevity as a football player.
Yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, I like him as well. I mean, with me, I think it has to be Samuel Eto'o. I mean, we just spoke before a little bit. I am half Cameroonian, so wherever Samuel Eto'o went, I followed. And
Yeah.
he played back then for Barca. I mean, I was still really, really, really young back then. But for me, any team that he played for, I followed and I supported. And the first team where I really noticed Eto'o was definitely Barca. He's more than a cult hero for us Cameroonians. And then I always used to watch Ronaldinho on YouTube as well. Those Ronaldinho highlights. I think that's what made me fall in love with Barcelona. Just the way that he played with so much joy, and that laissez-faire way of playing, the way that he played with the ball. I've never seen it since then. I've not seen anything close to that. Maybe Neymar, but he was just a different level back in the day.
Yeah, Ronald is
So
special.
yeah, he was definitely a special player. I mean, I hope that kids, that the next generation can see a player that can play with the ball like that, because that was crazy back in the day. Now, another thing I want to ask you is that, despite all of the chaos we always see with Barca, financial, the finances and Guerrero and everything, what keeps you emotionally attached to the club despite all of the chaos, we always see in the media?
I think it's the identity, how the club is as a club. And by that I mean the way we use our academy, the way we find solutions internally. And then it's still, even though we have deviated slightly from it, it's still like the Barca philosophy, the
Hmm.
part about keeping the ball, creating with the ball, trying to play beautiful football more than just winning. Because I've been thinking a little bit about that, what like makes me a Barca fan and why I love the club. And when I look at a team like Real Madrid, where you have the superstars, but at the same time they have more power, and it's just not the same feeling. It's more about just winning for them. They don't care how they do it. But when it comes to Barca, you even if we don't win, you often get great football. You can enjoy games, and it's exciting in its own way. So I think that's the key for me.
I get you completely. I mean, the thing is that, with Real, they also have like this Galacticos where they always get the biggest stars. That has never really worked out at Barcelona. I mean, we did have a team full of many, many stars, back then when we were at the peak of our, football, mid 2000s, the beginning of the 2010s. But those players are mostly from the academy. We did not buy those players. They were created in La Masia, whereas with Real Madrid, they are always looking for the biggest players, despite them not necessarily fitting what they need in the team. And I think that sort of humbleness is also what, resonates with me as well. And I just couldn't imagine supporting a different club. It's always been in Barca for me, to be honest, as well. So I fully understand what you're saying when it comes to Barcelona.
You get proud when you see players like Lamine Yamal play and
Yeah.
know that he came through our academy. And even when we get players, there's a certain style we target, such as Pedri,
Hmm.
who is from La Masia, but he plays in a way which makes you think that he has been at Barca his whole life.
Yeah. Absolutely. And whenever players do come to Barcelona, they always end up missing the club. I always think of players like Aubameyang. Like he never stopped speaking about Barcelona when he left, despite being there for such a short time as well. So I think there's just something special around the club, despite us slowly rebuilding the club and getting back to our top level. And for a long time we were struggling. And despite all of those struggles, for me, there was never any doubt of why I should support the club. And it's just this certain feeling that I think no other club in the world can really give you as a supporter.
Exactly. I've enjoyed the process as well. Struggled under Koeman, then Xavi came in and gave us some hope, made us competitive, won some trophies, and then Hansi Flick took charge, inherited a great team from Xavi with some
Yeah,
amazing talents, and from there it's gone one way, and that's up. So it's been a brilliant process. It's been a logical process under difficult circumstances given
yeah.
our financial situation, but we have come out on top.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I mean, we will get into like the different philosophies later and how important Xavi was for rebuilding this Barcelona team, because I feel like his role as a manager is very, very underrated. People always like to look into the stats a little bit too much.
Yeah.
His win and loss ratio and all of those things. And yes, there were times where the team was not perfect, but I think that when it comes to Xavi, without him, even if Hansi Flick would have come later, we would not have the same Barcelona team in any shape or form. Like he was really, really important for that rebuilding phase. And I wonder where football is going to take him next. I was thinking maybe Man United, because I heard that there was some interest, but it looks like it's going to be somebody else at that club.
It does.
Yeah. So there are going to be a lot of Barcelona fans watching this. And I have a lot of friends who are Barcelona fans as well. And, like all of us, you're a Barcelona fan. And I want to ask you, what exactly made you create this account on Instagram? When did you decide that, I want to start talking about Barcelona publicly and not just be a fan who sits and enjoys the games?
That's a very good question. I think I've always had it in me to do this type of content creation, but it has to fit with your interests. It can't just be about anything. I've always been a big Barca fan, and I've been active in different forums and so on, talking to others. And a lot of the time, I found myself disagreeing with many, and I
Hmm.
was never afraid to be the odd one out, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
I was never afraid to share my opinions. And with time, I just felt like I wanted to do something more. I wanted to speak to others, and that led me to make the page Bad Barca Opinions, which started off with just me basically disagreeing with people, and I shared their comments
Hmm.
and kind of like debunked what they said, tried to prove them wrong, or if I could prove it, I used my own arguments, and it got attention. People agreed, so the page grew. And from there, I had to develop. So I started doing my own analysis. I kind of quit doing the whole Bad Bar's Opinions type of
Hmm.
content, which I started off doing. I had to evolve, and the account kept on growing. People agreed, some disagreed, and that's perfectly fine. But I tried to stick to myself and be the one I am, my own personality,
Hmm.
build a page on me basically. And since that, I've enjoyed it and tried to expand to different platforms. And just kept on going.
You've definitely done a good job doing that. I mean, I've been following you for quite a while now. I think I said before, for at least 3 years. I don't remember when exactly I followed you for the first time, but I did see the change in content. And speaking of like bad Barca opinions, is there a bad Barca opinion that sticks out when you think, you know, to those opinions back then that really sticks, where like, how could somebody be of that Barcelona opinion? For example, one opinion that I find crazy is that Lionel Messi could not do it in the Premier League. That's one opinion that always sticks, to my mind, because I really don't understand why people really believe that he could not do it in the Premier League. If I have to think of like a bad Barca opinion.
Yeah, I think that's funny because it was you just said what I was about to say, the one
Hmm.
about Messi. Because back in the days when I started it, I think Messi was basically like 70% of the club because a lot of the players, a lot of the stars had left, and
Hmm.
he kind of like represented the club. He didn't have his World Cup back then. He didn't have his Copa America trophies. There was a lot of narratives about him. And the
Hmm.
one you mentioned about him not being able to do it at a different club, or the fact that he couldn't be the best player ever before he had won something with Argentina. Those type of opinions was something I kept on debunking for a while
Hmm.
because they make absolutely no sense. And my argument was always that it's the quality of the player, the individual abilities that make the player who he is.
Yeah.
So Messi at Barca is as good as he is for Argentina, but obviously surroundings are going to be different. You can't win anything by your own, which we saw in the end when Messi has started winning with Argentina. The collective improved. But
Hmm.
that opinion right there about not being able to do it in certain leagues, when, for example, Messi put up some of the best performances ever against arguably the one of the best teams from England ever, which was Manchester United in
Yeah,
2009 and 2011, and you also had Chelsea.
yeah,
It never made any sense at all. Those were the type of things uh, that I talked a lot about in the past and that I really, really disagreed with.
yeah. I completely agree with you. I mean, if you look at like the Champions League stats, you're always playing against the best English clubs, and Messi has a crazy record against, I guess you could say, the top six in England. You know, City, Arsenal, United, Chelsea. I don't know if you can. Yeah, let's add Tottenham into that conversation as well. He's got like a really good record against these top clubs, and if he has to play against Stoke and Sunderland and those lower tier English clubs, why shouldn't he be able to do it against those clubs if he's doing the
Yeah,
same thing in Spain against teams like Cadiz, Alaves, those teams that normally finish lower on the table?
exactly. And I also focused a little bit on the leagues because I also had a lot of conversations with Premier League fans because
Hmm.
they kept on discrediting La Liga, saying that the overall quality in that league was lower than it
Hmm.
was in, for example, the Premier League. But then I would always answer and I would refer to Leicester, who won the league back in, was it 15-16
15,
season?
16, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone are all about how competitive Premier League is, but the way I saw it was just that the quality of that league was at a really bad point, which meant that a club like Leicester could end up winning it, even though it's impressive at all
Hmm.
and all
Hmm.
that, but they would never come out on top if Barca were in that league, for example, or Real
Hmm.
Madrid. So also the league quality when you had like Athletic Bilbao knocking out Manchester United from the Europa League back in the
Hmm.
days. So there was a lot of things that were wrong and a lot of things that people said which didn't really make sense if you compare
Hmm.
like the games that teams in Spain had against teams from England. Most of the times, from Spain would win. Obviously, it's different now, but if we speak from like 2009 to 2018, something like that, I think La Liga
Hmm.
was better than Premier League.
Yeah, there was definitely a time when the Liga teams were performing a lot better. If you think back to like the early 2000, you think of like, old Valencia.
Yeah,
I mean, they're no longer the same team anymore. Or if you think back to like a couple of years ago, also Villarreal, they were doing really well in the Champions League. Then you obviously have like the three titans, Barca, Real, and Atletico Madrid. And I think nowadays the quality has definitely gone down in the league, unfortunately. I mean, you were just talking about Bilbao. We did see the game a couple of days ago where Barcelona absolutely annihilated that Bilbao team. It was good to see as a fan, but I was kind of sad because Bilbao has always been a team that I respect, that identity of keeping players from their own province only, from Basque Country, and unfortunately, it just looks like they're struggling with their stars getting older and to replace all of them.
yeah, for sure.
But anyways, sticking to Barcelona, since you mentioned before that the style has gone away a little bit. We don't really play that Barcelona type style that much anymore, like with Pep. Do you think that they have a clear philosophy nowadays, or do you feel like Hansi Flick is redefining it completely?
It's not redefining it completely. It's a little bit more vertical, which means we want to attack space quickly, but
Hmm.
that's to adapt to modern football. Because
Yeah.
right now, if you're going to succeed against the best teams, you have to take advantage of space when it's there. When it's
Hmm.
not there, teams are extremely organized, meaning it's difficult to break through. So you do need a little bit of transitional threat. But we're still all about keeping possession and playing with the ball. And sometimes we pause, slow down, defend with the ball. That's important, which you saw against
Hmm.
Real Madrid. We had
Yeah.
like 76% ball possession in the first half.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's still built on the principles that we've always had, but a bit more vertical. I think the time when I felt most disconnected in a way was under Valverde.
Hmm.
Didn't see, obviously, he had a relatively old squad. We had Messi, we had Suarez, who didn't really press and didn't really run. But a lot of the time, we just couldn't dominate games the way I was used to seeing. It was more about being a bit deeper in a 4-4-2 structure, waiting for some Messi magic, not
Hmm.
really playing to do the best of our potential, which is why I wasn't really that surprised when we were knocked out first by Rome,
Mm.
by Liverpool. Those games weren't that surprising because I remember in the first leg against Liverpool, it was actually quite close. Barca had some good football, I'm not going to say anything
Yeah.
else. But the main reason we won 3-0 is Messi because he
Yeah.
scored
You're right.
a
Yeah.
free kick and performed some magic, which obviously he can do, but you should never rely on it. You should always try
Hmm.
to strengthen the collective. While Valverde couldn't really do that. So we got exposed at times, and that could have happened many times. It was like just a question of time before it happened, and eventually it
Yeah,
did.
yeah, I agree. I mean, that team was purely Messi back then. I think that
Yeah,
that 18-19 season is one of the best individual performances I've seen in a while from a player. I
yeah,
mean, if you would have taken Messi out of that team, I wonder where we would have finished in the league. to be honest with you.
I think like that version of Messi, even though he didn't score as many goals, might be like the most complete
Yeah,
football I've ever seen from an individual. And there's no player ever that comes even close to replicating that season that he had there.
yeah, you're right. And if you just look at like the best seasons we've ever seen in football before, it's a lot of Messi until we get into like the other goats of football. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just crazy what the guy did at the club. I don't know. Sometimes I wish I would have appreciated it a little bit more. I was just so used to seeing Messi week in, week out, and just creating so much magic on the pitch
yeah.
that once that was gone, I fully understood what he was actually doing for the club when he was playing there.
Exactly. Just think about it, because if you grow up and become a footballer, the chance of becoming like the best goal scorer ever or in the world is quite low, or it's nearly impossible. But then you also combine it with Messi, and what's special about Messi is that you could easily put forward an argument that Messi was also the best dribbler in history,
Yeah,
and Messi was the best passer in history, or the best playmaker in history.
yeah, yeah.
So you combine that with the goals he scored, and then you realize that there's truly no comparison to anyone. He stands on the top alone, and he will probably do so, because I don't see anyone doing what he did, and just the probability of just becoming the best in all those areas is so low. Even in just one area, it's almost impossible. You have Haaland who can score tons of goals, but he's never going to be up there in the other aspects.
Now Haaland is never going to be a Messi type of playmaker. It doesn't just work into even his build. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just never going to be a Messi type of playmaker. That's literally a one in a million type player, and I'm afraid to say that I don't think I'm ever going to see a player like that. Till I land in the grave. I think that Messi is the pinnacle of football that I will get to witness.
Yeah.
Um, as an enjoyer of the game.
100%.
Well, let's just see. We're both. I think you're 27, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm 21, so you've been following Barca a little bit longer than I than I
Yeah.
have. And I want to ask you, because you have an Instagram account where you can see what people comment, and you have a general idea of how Barcelona fans feel. I think probably better than I do. Do you feel like modern Barcelona fans, I mean like the younger ones, really understand the club's philosophy? Because you didn't grow up with it as we both did. We both saw the team evolve.
Yeah. It's a tough question, but I think overall, at least from my page, they appreciate good football and not just result. Because the
Mm.
times when we won, I saw that especially in the Xavi, when we had a lot of 1-0 wins, people were not satisfied. And I
Hmm.
think that's just an example of the way they also see football, that there is something deeper in Barcelona than just winning. You need to do it in a special way.
Hmm.
I think that's something that affects others. So if you start supporting Barca, then you get influenced by others who do the same, and that type of identity gets built in you over time.
Hmm.
So I would say so. I
Okay.
appreciate the fans coming through, the new fans as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to see the club continue to grow and stay up there when it comes to like the big football clubs. You always think of like Bayern, Real, and then you think of Man United and Barcelona. Despite everything that has happened, is still
Yeah,
up there. Just hoping that we can win a Champions League soon because we've been waiting for a while now. We can definitely get into that later and talk about our chances in the Champions League this year. Now to move on to like how Barcelona was built up to what we see today. How important was Xavi as a predecessor to Hansi Flick? Now, I feel like anybody who really follows the club is going to know this, but there will be some people out there watching saying that Xavi did not do anything that important for the club, or his legend status carried him as a manager, or some controversial opinions. But I feel like when it comes to Xavi, he was definitely a very important predecessor to
yeah.
Hansi Flick coming in afterwards.
I think Xavi as a coach is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to ever happen in the history of the club. Because we were in such a situation where if we got it wrong, we could be set back multiple years.
Hmm.
We could have potentially become the new Manchester United. Because when Xavi took over for Koeman, we were ninth in the La Liga.
Exactly.
And I remember checking like the odds. According to the odds, the bookmakers, we were unlikely to finish within top four because we were several points behind everyone. He took over. I remember in the first game looking at this lineup, it wasn't a great one, but immediately I saw something new, a clear identity, something that I had been lost. Set up in a more of a classic 4-3-3. Some principles about stretching the pitch, creating half spaces, playing through, and obviously it wasn't beautiful football, but you could
Hmm.
see the ideas there. And ideas are always something you can build on. While with Koeman, he didn't really have an identity for Barca. He switched up a little bit. Xavi, he made that clear right from the start. He also raised the standards and the expectations, which are extremely important because that has all to do about culture. If you get a poor culture at the club, where players don't work as hard, you're going to get beaten because
Hmm.
other clubs the margins are so slim. So you really need to be at 100%. 99% is not good enough. And Xavi demanded 100%.
Yeah,
In January, he got the likes of Dani Alves, Ferran Torres, Aubameyang, and Adama Traoré. I think most laughed when they saw this. The Barca had said Aubameyang because he had fallen out with Arteta. He wasn't really considered a good player anymore.
exactly.
Adama
Yeah,
Traoré was mostly a meme. He was not respected among the football fan base. And then Dani Alves, he was 37, 38 years old.
yeah, yeah.
But Xavi wanted them. He got them. And I remember in his first attempt against Atletico Madrid, Barca won 4-2.
Exactly. I remember that match very
And
well.
he
Yeah,
played, yeah, in that game, he played Dani Alves as a right back, 38 years old, Dani Alves. And he used him as more of an inverted right back who would move inside to create overloads against Atletico Madrid. And then he pinned Adama Traoré wide and just had him isolated in 1v1 situations against Atletico Madrid's players. Dani Alves scored. I also think that he got an assist.
yeah. I
And
believe so. Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong, but I know he scored for a fact. And I also remember Adama Traoré getting an assist.
yeah. He definitely got an assist.
Barca, yeah, Barca back then they hadn't won against Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid in two years, I think it was,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
was multiple times we hadn't won anything against them. And then I also remember the Super Cup final, which we lost to Real Madrid, but it
Mm-hmm.
was possibly the game in a very long time that I've been most happy about. Because even though we lost, we competed. And I also remember
Mm,
Laporta going into the locker room applauding the players. We were close, we weren't quite there, but you could see that it was something to build on. Months later, we won 4-0 at Santiago Bernabeu against Real Madrid. Once more with players who hadn't been at their peak before Xavi took over. Aubameyang absolutely flourished. You had
mm-hmm.
Frenkie being extremely good. And I also remember Dembele in that second part of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played some of his best football under Xavi. His best football bar PSG. So Barca went on a crazy run with players considered to not be anything or anything special. We climbed to second place above Atletico Madrid and finished the season in second place. In the
Mm-hmm.
summer, he then convinced and helped get players such as Kunde, Lewandowski, Rafinha,
Yeah.
all those players by calling them, talking about the project. Even Kunde spoke about interest from Chelsea, but that
I remember that. Yeah.
they were decisive. He spoke about his role, how we would see him in the Barca team, and those players joined. And we got some backing on the transfer market, the same type of backing that a club in Premier League, kind of like mid-table team, would get. He got that
Mm,
in one summer and ended up breaking some defensive records. He won us the league with, I think it was 85, 86 points, and we got a bit unlucky in the Champions League, but we also got a payback against Real Madrid in the Super Cup final, where we played possibly the best game we played in years, the 3-1 win, where he introduced and played with a type of box midfield using Xavi as a false left winger, more of a box midfield. Real Madrid didn't know what hit them, and Barca came out on top there. Obviously, the 23-24 season, I think in the end, that season wasn't the best, but the agendas doesn't do it justice, because it was
yeah.
better than we expect. We got 85 points in the league, would normally be, at least based on the last few seasons, could have been enough to win the season multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And Real Madrid, they got 95 points, something like that. So sure, they had an extraordinary season. They also won the
Yeah.
Champions League. So credit, they were the best team in the world. We weren't
Yeah.
going to beat them either way, not with the market we had. We were extremely unlucky in some games, and the players were quite clumsy. And in the Champions League, we got to the quarterfinal, and just a red card from Araujo prevented us from reaching the semifinals.
Mm,
We had the lead against PSG for a while there, but that red card ruined everything. Other than that, Xavi introduced the most important players we have today, which is Kvaratskhelia, Lamine Yamal, Fermin Lopez. He
mm-hmm.
trusted youth, he developed them, and he made players better at the club. So Hansi Flick, he inherited a team that was completely different from the one Xavi inherited. You
Mm-hmm.
can't really compare them. This Barca side is so much better than it was when Xavi
Definitely.
took over, and he deserves credit for building that team.
Yeah, I think with Xavi, it's a case of recency bias. You know, you always remember what happened last, and as you just mentioned before, he didn't end as well as he began. But
Yeah.
to base everything that he did on what happened, you know, in that 23-24 season, I think is very unfair towards him because, as he did say, he did implement a new culture into Barcelona that I think was missing for a long time. And I think that's why he wanted to bring in Dani Alves, a veteran who knows Xavi from when he was a player, that knows the
Yeah,
team, knows the club. Bring in Adama Traore, who's also a La Masia product, who, as he then said, stretch the pitch, which is something that he always tried to do with the 4-3-3, to stretch the pitch and isolate Adama Traore into those 1v1s. And he slowly brought back a culture that I think was missing for a very, very long time. I remember that back then with Koeman, my biggest worry was always, what do we do if we go back 1-0? Because once we were behind, I knew that there was not going to be any sort of comeback. I knew that the game was done and finished.
yeah.
You
That's
could
so
just see,
random.
yeah, it felt really random, and you could just see it in the players that they were kind of like carrying this burden. I think that was also from the Champions League as well. I think that there is an interview somewhere where Piqué talks about the fact that they literally went into the Liverpool game scared of what happened against Roma would repeat itself again. And I think that it's good that we've got young players now, who can start fresh, perhaps watch those games when they were younger, but were not part of those games. They don't carry that sort of trauma that these veterans were carrying, the likes of Piqué, Messi, Suarez, and so on and so on. So I think that's where Xavi did his best work. Bringing in those young players like the players you just mentioned, Kuba, say Lamine, the players who are really rebuilding this Barcelona team. Hansi Flick inherited a very young team, something that he's not really used to doing. The team he had at Bayer was a super team. I mean, they literally won the sextuple back in the day. And I remember that he had this very, very interesting, entertaining style of playing football. And when I heard that he's coming to Barca, I was really, really excited. I mean, back then, I was like, hopefully we just don't get a manager who makes everything regress that we've, built up over the course of the past years. So I was really, really happy to see Xavi come to the club, saying that he's excited to work with these youngsters, rebuild the team, maybe change identity a little bit, because as you did say, he does play a much more direct style of football compared to Xavi. Sometimes with Xavi, I did think to myself, why don't you go for the long ball in behind and, attack a little bit more directly? Because he was obviously playing a lot of this vertical football where, you would go through the middle and try and build things up. And then when teams came in with a low block,
Yeah,
we would always struggle a lot, like teams like Getafe, who used to
yeah,
play like a 5-4-1 back in the day, or Rayo Vallecano, we would always struggle a lot to break through. But now with Hansi Flick, I don't really see that anymore. We don't really struggle against that low 4-4-2 block or 5-4-1 block that you would see back in the day against Xavi. It doesn't work well anymore because players are always switching up positions, and
yeah.
you cannot defend with that type of low block against such dynamic football.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely like the improvement in terms of the positional rotations, focus on playing those inside combinations through structure and not just always going around it where the space exists. But we are also, one thing that's different is that Xavi, he wanted to access space, while it's, when it comes to Hansi Flick, he's more about playing into crowded areas and trying to play through spaces that doesn't really exist, trying those intricate combinations, trying what's difficult. Well, with Chavez was, we played it a bit safe at times, and it can work definitely if you have the right player personnel. But I think with the way we're playing right now under Hansi Flick, it's extremely efficient, and it's also relatively different compared to other teams in Europe.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. The thing I only worry about sometimes is, the thing I worried about before was the squad depth, but I feel like we're slowly getting to a good position where we're rebuilding that. Obviously, we're doing better financially than we were back in the day, so there will be more budget. I mean, I heard that Barcelona hopes to return to the one-to-one rule this summer, if I'm correct, and hopefully we'll be able to bring in some more players, especially for that back line. I'm still hoping that we can get a Schlotterbeck type player into the back four, so that we don't only rely on youngsters, but then we have a good mixture of youngsters and players who are obviously very experienced and just fit into the Barcelona team. So I'm excited to see how the next couple of years are going to look like with this Barcelona squad, because we have a really, really cool squad. And in my opinion, try not to be too biased here, but I feel like we play the most entertaining football right now.
Yeah, I agree, especially when you compare it to the top teams.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, are we going to get into like methodology and the type of football in Europe later, or talk about it here?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it now since we already arrived at that aspect. We can
Yeah.
definitely talk about the methodology now.
Yeah, because the thing is, Pep Guardiola, when he coached Barca, he kind of like set an example for everyone to follow. And everyone did follow that, the type of positional play where you move the ball through spaces. And in the end, when everyone do the same, it can become quite predictable. And if you have the best players, you're
Hmm.
always going to have like a superiority in terms of quality, so you will get wins. But what I appreciate with Hansi Flick is that it's a bit more variety in the way we attack. It's not that they're not forced to stay in the same positions all the time and just play in the
Hmm.
same structure. there's more fluidity and more players organizing themselves in small spaces and trying to combine. But you still have like a structure in place. It's not free flowing football as you've seen with Real Madrid at times and Ancelotti. There is still a structure in place, but it's freer and players are allowed to express themselves more. I think Rafinha is probably the best example there. The way
Mm-hmm.
he moves across the pitch and right now is probably, if not the best, one of the best players in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of methodology, Barca also play quite different than the teams such as Bayern Munich, such as Arsenal and Manchester City. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And the thing I also like about Barca is that we always adapt our style of play to what opponent we're facing and also what players start. For example, yesterday with Frenkie de Jong, he did drop down a little bit more, giving the other two midfielders more space to shift up forward. And I did see a post today about Koundé where you mentioned that Koundé was not the issue yesterday. And I have to agree with you there because I feel like, the reason why we got that first goal was because we left in way too much space with
Yeah,
the defensive line yesterday. You're facing Vinicius Junior. You cannot expect a defender to always defend. Attackers also have to attack, and at one point, somebody is going to dribble and make the correct movements and just get into that space. Especially when you're
yeah.
facing one of the best wingers in the world. Despite his form not being at that Ballon d'Or level form it was a couple of years ago, he's still one of the best wingers in world football right now, and you cannot expect Koundé, to win every single 1v1.
Exactly. There's a lack of context many times.
Yeah.
People see a player getting dribbled and suddenly that player is bad. Then you don't consider the fact that that defender is performing arguably the toughest defensive job in Europe, which is playing a high defensive line quite by himself on the right side there against one of the best wingers in the world, especially 1v1, which we give both time and space to run into. Then at some point you are going to lose a few duels there. Most players will when you're up against such a player. So
Hmm.
it becomes more about like how can we control Vinicius, a player like Vinicius, through our structure because you know that no individual will be able to do so. So that's the type of context that was missing.
Now, when it comes to Barcelona, since we were talking about Xavi, before, do you feel like in the future, depending on how Hansi Flick performs, that he'll maybe be remembered more positively in the future? Because maybe people will realize that, what, we've only reached this level because of what happened beforehand.
It's a good question. I think yes, in one way, he will be remembered. I think more and more realize what he did, but it will also probably be defined by how things go for Xavi when it takes the next job. If he goes to a
Hmm.
club and does extremely well, people will be like, they will see it in line of the coaching career he had at Barca. But if he goes to a club and it doesn't work at all, then we'll be like, okay, he can't do it. He couldn't do it at Barca,
Hmm.
and they will remember that. So it could go both ways, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy jump back then. I think he was coaching was it in Qatar back then?
Yeah.
And then going from that type of football to, high European level football is a crazy jump that I think most managers wouldn't trust themselves to take. So I think that, makes me respect him even more as a manager, taking such a big leap and then also the pressure of being one of the best players the club has ever had, but now returning as a former, as a club legend and having that pressure to have to bring Barcelona back up to the top. I think if you just look at the whole mental aspect of everything, we have to definitely give Xavi his flowers for that alone.
I very much agree.
Now, since we were talking about the current Barcelona squad as well, I want to ask you what your opinion of Araujo is because you were mentioning before that we got that red card and the man has definitely struggled with the big moments before. It's not only that PSG game; it's happened a couple of times now
Yeah.
where there are perhaps lapses of judgment. I mean, personally, as somebody who has done coaching before, if I'm coaching a player and in a 1v1 situation and you're already leading, I would rather you let the team score, not take the red card, and then try and work on and see where it goes. But that red card completely took us out of the rhythm of the game back then against PSG. So I want to ask what would you do with Araujo right now? He just returned back from his spiritual trip, I guess you could call it, to cool down and rethink everything, and it looks like he isn't going to retire early, which is I'm happy to hear because he has a lot of talent. He could be the best defender in the world. He has the attributes to be the best defender in the world. But sometimes I have the worry that he doesn't fit into the Barcelona system, or there's some sort of mental burden that he's carrying with himself that isn't allowing him to unlock his potential.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. It's complicated because when you're talking about mental health, you have to be quite careful with what you're saying
Hmm.
because he's probably struggled more than most realize. So,
Hmm.
but the most important thing for me is that people shouldn't hate him. They shouldn't give him hate. In football and most aspects of life, constructive criticism is something you just have to accept and acknowledge. So you're allowed to be critical of Rauho as long as you don't attack the person, but attack what he's doing on the pitch,
Hmm.
uh, and you do it in a respectful manner. Then I think that's fine. And obviously it's terrible that he has struggled with his mental health. Um, but football can be quite a brutal business, and playing for a
Hmm.
big club Like there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of people watching. There will be expectation and it's going to be tough. So I do really hope that he has gotten better. But my main issue has always been on the pitch, and he was extremely good back in 22-23 when Barca
Mm.
played a deeper, more compact defensive system. Since then, Barca have acquired and played a lot with players who are good on the ball, but not necessarily the best defensively. So you have the likes of Inigo Martinez, you have Eric Garcia, you have Kubarsi, who might not be the most brutal defenders in terms of pace or strength, so they can lose out to quick attackers and dribblers. That's that you can argue that trade-off is worth it based on what they give in possession to the team,
Mm-hmm.
how secure they are on the ball. While with Araujo, it's kind of like the opposite. He's not that confident on the ball. He's not a very good passer or ball carrier, which was why PSG targeted him when they faced us in the second leg.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to press him because they know he's not the most comfortable at it. But then again, if he does extremely well defensively, if he's reliable, if he's winning duels, tracking down attackers, just preventing teams from scoring and doing the job there, then you can argue that that trade-off is worth it. That you can complement them with a more ball-playing defender, and those two can outweigh each other in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not been reliable there either. He's not
Yeah.
been reliable in the aspects we need him to be reliable in. Which we saw against PSG with the red card, which we saw against Inter when he came on as a substitute and we needed some physicality in the box, someone who could just clear crosses. He lost the key duel there and he couldn't stay close to dribble, and then you have the Chelsea game on top of it where he got the red card. And the question is, how long can this be allowed to
Yeah.
continue? Like, how many seasons can we see the same before we actually make a decision? I think he's going to get to the end of the season, and if he convinces and steps up in big games and steps up in moments where, based on his player profile, is supposed to thrive, then he could continue. But if it doesn't really make a huge statement this second part of the season, then I see him gone in the summer.
Yeah, I agree with you because he should bring in good money as well for the club. I mean, clubs are looking to buy Araujo. I mean, they definitely were this summer as well. I remember hearing the likes of like Bayern wanting to pay like, was it 75 million or 80 million? I mean, I don't know how true all of those rumors are, but when rumors pop up, there has to be a reason why they pop up. So they don't just appear out of nowhere. There's always a little bit of truth behind most rumors. And the question is he even going to get the chance anymore to perform at in such big games? Because we've already seen him being a little bit of hit and miss. The Inter game, as you said, the PSG game. I don't know if Hansi Flick is going to want to give him the opportunity in such big games anymore. I see him probably playing more in like the Copa games, Copa del Rey and those type of games, and maybe not in the highest level of the Champions League anymore.
I agree. I don't think it's going to be a starter in the biggest games anymore. But injuries and substitutions and so on, he will get a chance in the big games. I'm fairly certain, as long as he's in the squad, because you have fatigue, you have rotations, you have injuries. At some point, he even played against Real Madrid yesterday towards the end.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so at some point, he's going to get a chance, and those chances are what he has to take advantage of if he is to continue. But I would argue that he might be better fit at a club like Atletico Madrid, prioritize defensive compactness, make things a bit easier for the defenders to just focus on the basics. While with Barca, it's a mental burden defending in such a high defensive line,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a special type of understanding and concentration. And maybe it's not for him, even though he has the physical quality, which means like if he was to have the timing of someone like Inigo Martinez, he would be unstoppable in such a high line because he can turn marginal situations in our favor just by being quicker than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember him always being, Vinicius kryptonite. I remember back then we literally used to play him at right back just to defend him in a 1v1 situation.
Yeah.
And Vinny often had no chance getting past him because he has such a robust, strong physical presence on the pitch. But perhaps maybe, that part of his game is lacking at the moment because of the whole, mental health aspect as well. Everything, works together. If the mental isn't doing well, your body's also going to struggle at one point. That's just how life works, and that's how it is with athletes as well. I think people always underestimate the mental aspect of playing at such a high level. You've got millions watching you all the time. The moment you don't perform well, you get hate messages. Things get very personal very quickly, even though they're just players playing and enjoying the beautiful game. Yeah. So we just got Cancelo. How long was it ago? A week ago?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Confirmed today that Barca as a club confirmed that he will play for us.
Yeah, I find him a very interesting transfer. I mean, I'm very happy that he's coming back. He was a player that had this touch of magic to him as well. I always enjoyed watching Cancelo. He isn't the best player defensively, but he brings a certain something to a team that you don't get with a lot of right backs. I mean, when I think of like the best right backs in the world right now, Koundé was in the conversation last year a lot, and then I also think of like Hakimi, and right now I think underrated players, for example, Konrad Leimer at Munich. Not saying this because I'm half Austrian, but I generally think that he's one of the best right backs in the world right now.
Yeah.
And back in the day with Guardiola, he was a very interesting player, Cancelo, and now he's at Barcelona. What type of role do you think that he's going to play now with this current squad? And do you think that he's going to influence the roles of other players?
I hope it's about adding specific quality, but I mean, we're not signing him to be a starter in the biggest games. We're not going to put him
Mm-hmm.
on against PSG and expect him to do an incredible job, because you would be using him in the wrong game state. But adding specific quality is just building a squad where you have a different set of skill sets. So, for example, Koundé is known as robust and defensive right back. Then you have in the opposite corner, you have Cancelo, who is more attack-minded, creative, can hit final balls, combine, dribble, but it's not the strongest when it comes to defending. So for me, it's about adding competition, giving the others a little extra push, because he can also play on the left side as a left
Mm-hmm.
back, he can play as right back, he can play as a winger, he can play in mid, he can basically play any position on the pitch. And I see value in having him in the squad, and maybe also starting in some La Liga games where we are up against a team who just sits back and we need something special to unlock it. Because a lot of the time you have Lamine Yamal, we give the ball to him and he tries to perform some magic, but he doesn't have that much support. But he always draws in a lot of opponents and it creates space elsewhere. But when you have
Mm-hmm.
a player like Koundé arriving in that space, it's not going to be that much threat compared to a player like Cancelo, who can
Mm-hmm.
make a big difference. So I think I support Lamine Yamal and those type of games where it's all about unlocking an opponent that's playing for a draw, essentially. It's going to be
Yeah.
valuable. So that's the role
Yeah.
I see from him, just adding specific quality.
And also bring experience to the team, because that back line is pretty young if you think about it. I mean, we had Inigo last year, and with that high line, it's very, very intensive and tiring type of football to play. I think Inigo is 35 right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it was clear that he would not be able to play the type of high pressure football for many, many years to come. And I know that it was disappointing to hear that he wants to, take things a little bit slower. But I think that it was sort of expected, because playing at that level with that high line, 70 games a season, I think, or maybe even more, Champions League, Copa, Super Copa, everything together,
Yeah.
it's a lot for a 35-year-old body to take on. And that's I'm surprised that Lewandowski, is still playing football at such a high level. I mean, we saw the Real Madrid game yesterday. I mean, he's no longer prime Lewandowski from 2019, but he plays a very, very important role in that team. And yeah, I'm very happy to have the guy there. Please don't send him to Saudi Arabia anytime soon. We need his experience in the team. We need veterans to teach the youngsters how to do it, because they cannot learn everything by themselves, despite there being so much talent in this Barcelona team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still believe that we have the best football academy in the world, and we've had the best academy for a long time.
I agree. And I also think that Cancelo showed a great attitude, right? Last time he was here.
Mm-hmm.
He showed passion for Barca's club, and he really liked staying here. Popular among his teammates, which also influenced the decision to go for him, because the other Barca players, they wanted him to join back, which matters a lot, honestly. The harmony of the squad is important, and having like a competitive but healthy environment.
I think that's one thing that, if you're looking at the left back position, if we go to the other side of the pitch, I think that's one issue that I have right now with the club, that, Balde doesn't have any proper competition. I don't know, I'd like to ask you, like, do you feel like his game has evolved a lot in, like, let's say the past 2 years? Because he's still a very promising left back, no doubt. But I feel like I kind of failed to see the proper evolution of Balde that I was, I guess you could say, hoping for. I feel like he's kind of stuck a little bit because he's got no competition.
Yeah, you can say that. But his role is also, it changes a little bit, because it's not the easiest job being a left back in Barca's system, because he usually plays next to Rafinha, and Rafinha is essentially a 10, or he plays as an inverted left winger, so he's isn't in that space either. So a lot of time when he gets the ball, he's quite isolated, and he's good for a dribbler when it comes to fullbacks. Then he's quite good if you compare it to like the best wingers. Then he's not that good anymore, and he essentially, in a lot of games, he becomes a winger. So it's difficult, but yeah, I agree, his development has not been that rapid, and I do hope he can take more steps, especially when it comes to end product, crossing, maybe arriving in positions, making those type of Jordi Alba off the ball movements in behind, and not always receiving ball to feet. So yeah, not been the best development, and I hope he can take some more steps.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that he can work on that final product. That is something that I always hear fans talk about as well. The crossing and the passing into the box. to create more chances. Because, if we can create chances from the right and from the left, I really don't see what is going to stop this Barcelona team going forward, as an attacking unit.
Yeah.
As you did say, Rafinha does like to come in through the middle a lot. He does have quite an open role sometimes, and then he is quite isolated on the side in Balde, and then, he does play as a winger a lot of the time. He's not really a left back. I mean, he is when the game begins. If you look at the formation, you can call him a left back, but he's playing more of a left winger role, or let's say like a left wing back, always running up and down and being isolated in those 1v1s. Do you think that the left back position is something that we should look into strengthening the next couple of transfer windows?
It shouldn't be a priority in my opinion, but over the course of the next few windows, then yeah, we should look for an upgrade on the left back position. But maybe doesn't look likely as of now. But I do have a lot of hope for Joffrey Torrance, who is an academy product. He's similar to Balde in some ways, but he has potential. Good ball carrier, can break the lines. Also, it's a decent final. Struggles a bit defensively though, so it's not the most robust there yet. But hopefully he can take some steps as well. We also have Jared Martin, who can feature as a left back, but his development seems to be more focused towards the centre back position right now.
Yeah, that's true.
So to conclude, it should be something we do after a while, unless some academy player come up, but it shouldn't be a priority.
What position do you think that we should be looking to strengthening right now? If we've spoken about the defensive line a lot, for me, I think the next question is the striker position. We have Lewandowski, but he's not going to be around forever. And then we've got Ferran Torres,
I think it should be the striker position.
Yeah.
Because as you say, we have Ferran Torres, but I don't really trust him to be starter material.
Yeah.
I think his abilities is good at some things, which is like a transitional game state where there's a lot of open space. He can be very good. And good at firing those shots quickly, but overall his hold-up play, how he's in the air, how he links with teammates is quite inconsistent. Because I remember the game we lost against Real Madrid in the first time we met the season when we lost, was it 2-1?
2-1, yeah.
Ferran Torres played as a striker, and there were many opportunities for Barca to do quite well and play through, because you had Rashford on the opposite flank, or on the left flank, who make those inside runs. And Real Madrid back then, they weren't that good either, but it was just Barca can really exploit the weaknesses. But while with Lewandowski, you also have that link between defense and attack, because you can involve him and play those third man runs. You can get the ball to him, a midfielder makes a run forward into space, he shields the ball, lays it off to him, and then you have Rafinha, Rashford running in behind into the space that Lewandowski has left open. But Ferran Torres, you don't really have that. So the striker position, if Lewandowski is relieved, then we should be looking at a striker, and it has to be the ideal replacement. The way our project is shaping right now, we need someone who can just replicate the goals that he scores. We can't sign someone that takes like 1 to 2 seasons to adapt before he starts scoring. Our project needs a goal guarantee. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, we definitely need a player who's experienced, who's already a proven goal scorer. We don't need there are lots of young players. For example, since I mentioned me from Cameroon, I've heard about Jong from Levante as well. Great talent, but he's not the striker that we need to bring in right now. We need to be looking into somebody who's already proven, fits into the system, a striker who is a proven goal scorer, but has the technical ability to be, a player who holds up the ball like Lewandowski, or kind of, like Harry Kane as well. As when you watch Bayern games, he often drops in really, really deep, Harry Kane. And he's really important for that holder play in that company system. And then at one point you'll see him run forward and then he'll score a goal. And we need a player who can do both. And as you said, that is what is lacking with Ferran Torres as well. I mean, he's really good off the bench. I like the guy a lot, even though he can be really hit and miss. Not only as a striker, also his the way he uses the goal scoring opportunities, he can be very hit and miss there as well. Like literally. So I wonder what type of striker we're going to get. It definitely depends on if we can return to the 1-to-1 rule in the summer. I've been hearing a lot of Alvarez, and I even heard that he does want to move to Barcelona. I don't know how true those rumors are. Cannot confirm or deny, but that's a player that we should be looking into if we have the budget for that in the summer.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what we do on the market, but it depends on Lewandowski leaving, at least.
Yeah. I think that he does want to renew for 1 more year, if I'm not mistaken.
It could be true. I think he likes life in Barcelona, and they have to there. So that's what matter.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. Especially with his family, the wife likes it in Barcelona a lot. The warm people, the weather and everything, which I can understand. Maybe he will just stay in Barcelona and just live there, not play for the club anymore. We will see what will happen. We both don't know what's going on in the club internally, but yeah, I'm excited to see where exactly the transfer window brings us this summer. Especially with us hopefully returning to the 1-to-1 rule. We do have that good Nike deal. I mean, the Nike deal is confirmed, right? I think we've got the best paying kids deal. Or I don't really know what happened on there, because I heard some things. we were supposed to get like the best kid deal in football right now, with Nike, and extend the contract for 5 more years.
And anything
Yes.
can happen. But I think the stadium itself, getting that up to speed, full capacity, it's going
Hmm.
to give us a lot of extra revenue that I don't think people really think about. It has cost a lot to build, but it's going to pay for itself.
Yeah, it's a massive project. I mean, when I went to Barcelona the last time, that was in 2023. We spoke a bit before the interview. That was the Sociedad game against Barcelona where we lost 2-1, and obviously Sørloth had to score against us, like
Yeah.
he likes doing a lot. Sørloth, Lewandowski, and I don't remember who scored the first Barca goal. I think it was Mendes. I think it
Yeah.
was Mendes, and we actually won the league that day because it did not matter if we won, lost, or drew that game. We ended up winning the league on that exact day. And I think the stadium had a capacity of 99,000
Yeah.
before the rebuild, and should now go up to 102K,
Yeah.
which is a lot, making it the biggest football stadium in Europe, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the
Yeah.
biggest one now. Barca is such a big brand as well. People always underestimate how big of a brand Barca is.
Yeah.
We're more than a football club now, and I'm excited to see where exactly Laporta is going to take us in the next couple of years.
Agree.
Now, when it comes to this Barcelona squad, do you feel like there is one player who is really misunderstood, not only by fans, but by football fans as well? For me, I think that's Frenkie de Jong.
I was going to mention him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What's your opinion on Frenkie de Jong? Because I remember that back then people wanted him out because of his high salary, and there were a lot of rumors that were coming out about him that were not really true. Even now, the club members of Barca voted which player they would likely sell. I think that he finished second place, which really surprised me. So,
Well,
yeah.
when it comes to misunderstood, for me, you obviously have a salary, and it's been a lot of noise around him the last few years, but that's calmed down a little bit now. But it's more about the player profile and what he represents and what he does on the pitch, because people think about football and the importance of playing with high speed, moving the ball quickly, and just having a lot of pace. Then you have Frenkie, who often uses a lot of time on the ball. He holds on to it, he turns back and forth. And they think that's time wasting, and that we're losing momentum. Maybe sometimes it's good to play quickly when there's space open. But a lot of the time, if you just play with speed, teams are still so organized that they just shift back and forth all the time. So you need someone that's more creative, and someone that's not afraid to play into pressure. Players often play away from pressure. They look for open space. They move the ball there to get away from other opponents. While with Frenkie, when he holds onto the ball, he attracts players, and when he attracts players, then space will open up for others. So essentially, what he's doing is being extremely creative for the team, and he's adding something different, something that, for example, Real Madrid would have needed. Someone who can pause the play, draw in opponents, and the thing about Frenkie is never going to put a team under pressure either. If he has the ball and he sees a teammate that is making a run, but that teammate, he's being followed and he's in a bad position to receive the ball. Some players will just shift the responsibility to him and think it's his problem. But while Frankie would rather hold on to it himself, and even if that leads to him losing the ball, he would rather just trust his own abilities and then look
Hmm.
for a better option. So Frankie is definitely the most misunderstood player we have. He's a
Hmm.
true genius. I'm doing like an analysis of the game yesterday, and I been studying Frenkie on the pitch because I think like he was the best player for us.
Yep.
And what got me thinking is that he's almost like a coach on the pitch because he understands the game so extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he needs to drop into the free space for others. He's instructing others where to move. It's like having a coach on the pitch, basically, Frenkie. So yeah,
Yeah,
for certainly the most misunderstood player in my eyes.
yeah. I feel like that's why midfielders generally turn out to be really, really good coaches. They're the ones who control the game. If you don't have a good midfield in modern football nowadays, you can forget progressing as a collective. I feel like the midfield is the most important part of the pitch in modern football right now. And it was very interesting to see Frenkie play I guess you could say, as a single pivot yesterday, and how he directed space
Yeah.
through his movements. And he only plays that ball, that dangerous ball, when it needs to happen. He doesn't force it. And it's something that you don't see in football nowadays. As you said, football is really, really quick. The game is always becoming quicker and quicker. If you just compare it to like 15 years ago, football looks different. Back then you had more of these robust profiles. You don't see them nowadays. It's always about being dynamic, being technically good with the ball. And Frankie's all of those things, but he really slows down the game, and you don't see that with a lot of players nowadays. I feel that's a very underrated aspect of his game. And the question I was going to ask you afterwards is who gets too much criticism from fans, but I think that Frenkie de Jong is definitely one of those players. I often hear the term side pass merchant, which I feel like is just way too one-dimensional when it comes to Frenkie, whether he plays football.
Yeah, I think they don't really understand him, and a side pass can be valuable itself. It depends on what it gives the team.
Hmm.
So probably Frenkie there as well. Can't really think of others that gets a lot of criticism. Maybe Lewandowski actually.
Yeah, you're right.
He gets a lot of criticism as well because he can make a few mistakes and is not as agile as he was a few years ago. So he can look a bit slow, but scoring the way he does is some of the most difficult things you can do on a football pitch.
Hmm.
Just the understanding of where to position yourself in the box, but also in the box he gives a lot to the others because he attracts a lot of attention from defenders and it leaves space open for the likes of Fermin Lopez, for the likes of Rafinha to arrive. So Lewandowski is also another one that's like the goals that he scores is not appreciated enough.
Now, if we talk about bringing in players, I feel like that's what happened in the Bilbao game. That's what Roni was doing really really well, pulling in players from that back four line and creating space on the right side. I feel that's a very underestimated aspect when it comes to scouting, looking to different football profiles. How well can a player pull people out of their static positions during a game? And I feel like that's a very underestimated aspect of, for example, Lewandowski. Or when you look at the Bilbao game, Roni's role, who's always getting better and better. It was a really, really good transfer that we made. I don't remember how much we paid for him, but it was not a lot of money that we
2
paid.
million approximately.
Yeah, something like that. And for the profile that we're getting there, I feel like that's one of the best transfers that we've made in a long time. We can obviously talk about Garcia in goal. Could we call him the best goalie in the world right now? We definitely could. That for me, that's not a stretch by any means. Probably the bargain of the season, considering how much that goalkeeper position has improved with him being there. I think that if we would have had him last year, we could have won the Champions League. His shot-stopping ability, if you just look at his profile compared to, like, no disrespect against Szczesny. Szczesny is obviously a lot older now. You cannot compare,
Yeah.
Szczesny and Garcia, a player who's reaching his prime and a player who's past his prime. Obviously, I'm very happy that we got Szczesny last season on a free, but the improvement just by having him gives me so much confidence whenever I watch Barcelona. I'm no longer scared that a ball is going to slip past somebody's fingers or,
Yeah.
God knows what. But yeah, that's probably the bargain of the season, in my opinions, this season. Getting Juan Garcia from our rivals as well for that price.
Yes, crazy, crazy transfer. I very much agree. He probably could have won the Champions League last season if we had him in goal.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Now, how do you see our chances this season? We had the issue with the defensive stability. Now we've had, up until the Real Madrid game, I think we had 5 clean sheets in a row, or 5 or 6, something like that.
I think it was 5 in a row.
Yeah, and I think that was like the first time since 2020 that we've had so many clean sheets in a row. It's been a long time since we've had 5 in a row. I think a lot has to do with Garcia as well. Even if you just look at the Espanyol game, the XG he prevented, I think it was like 1.6 or 1.7. I think that it definitely increases our chances of being able to win the Champions League this season, having such a goalie in goal.
For sure, I think it's good that people underestimate us because it's easier to work in silence.
Yeah.
So I think when they think of the best teams, they think of Arsenal, PSG, Manchester City, Bayern Munich, and because Barca lost against Chelsea, we didn't have the best start. Lost first at Clasico. People have kind of written Barca off in a way, and they've criticized the way we're playing. And while I wouldn't say that we're like the outright favorites, we're up there still, in my opinion. And speaking of Joan Garcia, I've always highlighted the importance of difference makers in games when it comes to the Champions League because you're up against the best teams, and it's impossible to be in control for 90 minutes, so it will shift back and forth a lot of the time, and having players who can do what others can often makes a huge difference. You have
Yeah.
Courtois in goal for Real Madrid.
Mm.
It was outstanding when they won the Champions League, saved things that other goalkeepers wouldn't save. And there's also a point which people don't think about, and it's the type of goalkeeper Joan Garcia is and how that aligns with Barca style of playing. We essentially run a high risk, high reward type of style of playing, but we take a lot of risks going forward. But in the end, you can justify it as long as we outscore the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
But running such a high defensive line, making the pitch as small as we can, going forward to win it back quickly, and allow those through balls and players to run in behind, playing with an offside trap, it will lead to chances against. And those type of chances will be quite big. There might not be that many in a game. Maybe they run through 2 to 3 times. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. But you can pretty much expect that the quality of that chance is going to be quite high. And
Yeah.
then having a goalkeeper who can shift the margins in a way, who has the capacity to save those type of chances, that's quite underrated because it could essentially be a game changer for Barca. Not just having a goalkeeper who's good at saving shots from distance and reliable there, but having someone that's actually good on the line, good leaving his line, a modern goalkeeper, and that is John Garcia. So I have faith in him that he can make a big difference. But Champions League comes a lot down to luck more than
Yeah, yeah.
form. There's also like an argument that teams like Arsenal were very organized. They would like walk through Barca, and maybe they would beat us. I can't say for sure. They have a good style of playing. We could struggle against such an organized team that has those patterns of play that they use to get through. It's all very automated. While you can also flip the page and say that those types of teams, they're also used to defending against teams who kind of like play in the same way. While with Barca, something new, so they could also struggle against us, struggle with
Hmm.
our unpredictability going forward. So there's a lot of factors. I think our chances are good, but you can never say for sure because Champions League is Champions League, and it's just you only need to miss one penalty and then you're out, or score an own goal. So there's a lot of luck involved with Barca's. Barca should have a decent chance.
Or one red card, or some sort of
Yeah,
injury. Think, since you were talking about, for example, maybe Arsenal saying that they've never played against such a team. I think about the Newcastle game, about that Anthony Gordon interview,
yeah,
where he said he's never faced such a type of midfield before. Like they did not know what to do,
exactly.
and yeah, and that's you have to think about that as well. Some teams are used to facing certain types of teams. There are teams in the Premier League who do play with a higher line. Playing against Barcelona is different to playing against a team that you're used to playing against week in, week out. Especially with Barca's technical ability. If you've got a Pedri and you've got a Casado, a Frenkie de Jong in midfield, and then you've got like Fermin Lopez, so many different profiles that work so well together, and you're not used to facing the type of football, it can completely change the outcome of a game. And when we face Chelsea, we have to think about the player profiles that we're missing as well. For a long time, for that part of the season, we were missing out players like Rafinha and so on and so on. And Rafinha is a difference maker. If you don't have a player like that in your squad, obviously I do expect the team to perform worse. This Barcelona team that we have right now, they just look really, really well trained together. For a section of the game yesterday, I felt like Real Madrid were not going to score, but then at one point that backline just opened up, and then Vini did his magic. But for that first half, for a long period of it, I felt like they were not going to score at all.
Yeah.
The ball was literally just pinging left, right, to and fro the whole time, and I was like, wow, this is amazing football that I have the opportunity to watch right now.
Agree.
Well, I want to move on to like a different aspect, less about Barcelona, more about fan culture. Since you do run an Instagram page where you read lots of comments from fans, do you feel like football conversation has become more aggressive? Because, for example, if you go to different football pages, sometimes I feel like people don't really watch the game. They just watch highlights that they see on Instagram, and then they develop these opinions that don't really fit reality of what's going on in football. Like, for example, they'll watch a Frenkie highlight and they see that the ball is going in, to the left and to the right. They'll call him a side pass merchant, or they'll watch a player miss a penalty and he'll suddenly be labeled as a horrible player. For example, Baggio, he missed a penalty back then, and people concentrate on that penalty way too much, even though Roberto Baggio is an amazing football player. So I don't know. What do you think about the development of football conversation in general?
On my page, I would say I built quite a solid community. So I see most of the comments are nice and cool, and they add some value to the conversation. If I enter like a random page, and if it's a big one, maybe not even tied, or it could actually be tied to a club as well, then there's a lot of reactionary comments in the comment
Hmm.
section, which focuses a lot on moments and not what really happened throughout the 90 minutes. They can single out one specific moment and just talk all about that and not adding any context to it. And it becomes more about just out of context criticism or hate. But I don't know how that was several years ago, but it's easier now with social media to express yourself and do it behind the screen. Makes it even easier as well to, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I do wonder how it was for football players back in the day without any social media, in terms of pressure, if they were feeling a similar level of pressure that players do nowadays. Because, whenever I watch a match and a certain player misses, I'm like, well, I feel sorry for that player. They're going to get a lot of
Yeah.
hate. That is the way I felt back then when I watched the Euro finals. I think it was England against Italy. And I saw a young Bukayo Saka going up to the penalty spot. And I just had a weird feeling that he was going to miss. He didn't look that confident in his run-up. And I was like, poor guy, he's going to get a lot of abuse. 15 years ago, yes, we did have social media, but not to this level of extent that we do nowadays. It's just completely different. The whole world, it just operates in a different way now. And I do often feel sorry for players when they do have a bad game. If you just go to football Twitter, it can be a very, very toxic place. I prefer to stay away from football Twitter nowadays, to be honest. I mean, there are some funny memes. I'm thinking of the Rafinha meme from a couple of days ago, with the big biceps, but sometimes it can get really, really toxic online, and I do feel sorry for certain players.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
if you just think about Marcus Rashford as well, before he moved to Barcelona, I feel like there's a lot of there's a healthier fan culture with Barcelona fans and with Man United right now. I mean, I can understand it to a certain extent because they're really struggling as a club.
Yeah,
and they're not run very well compared to Barcelona, where we have Laporta, who literally brought us out of the dirt 20 years ago. I mean, he's doing it again now.
yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like with football and just in general, people need to learn to, be open to different opinions and not just criticize, but just listen for a quick second, try to understand where the person comes from, and then respond in a respectful way. Not only football, but just in general.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Now I've got some like, more open questions. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite Barcelona goal of all time that just, pops into your head when you think of Barca?
Okay, so my birthday is the 27th of April.
Okay.
And I think when I turned 13, back in 2011, Barca played against Real Madrid, the second leg of the Champions League semi-final. And I remember till this day, like where I was, how I reacted, and everything like that. And I think back then it was a little bit late for me, so I watched it in my room. Not sure if I was allowed to do so either. But I do remember it was the second leg. It was the first leg against Real Madrid. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if I said the second. The first leg at Santiago Bernabeu, and 0-0 for a while. Then Afellay came on, and out of nowhere, Barca scored. He assisted Messi, who made it run into the box. That's not my favorite goal. The favorite goal is what happened after when Busquets laid it off for Messi in midfield, and he just ran straight through the defense. I think that's no goal will ever top that. That
Mm-hmm.
moment right there, just watching Messi do that on the biggest stage against Mourinho's Real Madrid with Ronaldo on the opposite side. Like you can't get any bigger and more special than that. So that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely my favorite goal.
Okay, that's a really good answer. I mean, I've seen so many memes about that being the best assist of all
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I mean, for me, if I have to think about like, okay, maybe not the best goal, but one goal that I remember because I remember what I was eating, what I was wearing, and where I was that exact moment is that Messi free kick against Liverpool. I think it's on the when did
Oh,
we play against them? The 1st of May, I think it was 2019.
yeah.
I remember exactly where I was sitting at that time. I was actually in a bar watching that game on that exact day. Remember exactly what I was wearing, and I was like, you know what? We won the game 3-0, and I remember going back home with a really good feeling. Then, obviously the week afterwards we lost 4-0, and
Yeah.
when I came to school, I was absolutely ridiculed because I was on as their Barcelona fan in my class, and one of my best friends actually bought a Liverpool scarf and hung it onto the blackboard, and he was there waiting for me when I went into the classroom, and we always had these dumb football discussions in class. I do miss those days sometimes a little bit. I get a little bit nostalgic talking about it now. I have to think about another goal. It has to be that Messi goal in the El Clasico where he held up his T-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that goal, it's etched into my memory. Well, actually, that same friend is actually a Real Madrid fan as well.
Oh,
And yeah, that completely changed up, the conversation we were having that day. I just remember that goal. Like, I was downstairs. We were having a small party in the living room, and I was sitting on the couch watching that game with some family members. I just remember that goal so well. I think I ran around the table like 5 or 6
yeah.
times,
That was great.
screaming. Yeah, that goal, it's just etched in my memory, and that's goat level stuff right there when it comes to the goat conversation,
Yeah.
as we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
For me, it's clearly Messi. He is a Barca player. Yes, I'm going to be a bit biased, but I just feel like nobody reaches that level of footballing ability.
I don't see any argument for him not being the best player ever.
I mean, I wonder how I'm going to feel the day that he retires. I think it's
Yeah,
definitely going to play with my emotions a bit.
for sure.
Speaking of favorite goals, what about the favorite match? Is there one that you remember as well?
Game is probably still. Actually, I have a few. It's the one back in 2011. You also have the dimension with the goal against Real Madrid, and then you also have the final against Manchester United in the same season. The
Mm-hmm.
game which followed the semi-final, the final against Manchester United, because I felt like that game was the most dominant Champions League final I've ever seen. It was like playing a team in the middle of the La Liga table, Manchester
Mm-hmm.
United, in that game. There's also some recent ones. I think like the 4-0 against Real Madrid was
Mm-hmm.
extremely special to me, given like the context and how we finally bounced back. But also the 3-1 game against Real Madrid in the Supercopa final
Mm-hmm.
under Xavi, because that was also like it was like we were back in the old days, dominating with a collective performance and not just individuals. So that was extremely special for me. So, but yeah, there's many games, but those that come to my mind will be those.
Okay, yeah, I fully understand that. For me, I think if I'm thinking of recent games, like okay, not like this season, but like 22, 23, I'm thinking about El Clasico, the 2-1 win where Kessié scored that really late goal. That game was also really special to me because you could just tell that Barcelona is coming, like we're slowly getting back to the
Yeah,
top. I mean, that was not the point when I felt like Barcelona was returning to being in top form, but that was further proof that we're slowly coming back. Because for a long time, whenever I would look into the fixture list and I would see like, okay, we're going to face Atletico, Real Madrid, I was just like this in my room, being like, I hope that we can survive
yeah,
the next match day. I mean, if you just think about that squad back then, we had the likes of Braithwaite, Emerson Royal and Mingueza, like just different level of quality to now. Like nothing against those players, and they were important for the development of the team as well. Without those players, we wouldn't be where we are now. We needed that stage to happen, but that was just a different level of Barca football back in the day.
Yeah, we also have the PSG game, obviously, and the comeback, the 6-1 comeback. It was also
Oh yeah, true.
obviously one of my favorite games, but it's become like a classic one that everyone loves.
Yeah, yeah.
So I try to be a bit more unique in a way.
Yeah, I fully get you. And since you have a Barca kit in the back and you're wearing one right now, do you have a favorite Barcelona kit of all time now? I'm obviously not wearing my Barca kit right now. I have a couple in the cupboard over there.
Yeah, I'm wearing the 10-11 shirt right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's one of my favorites. I don't have like an exact favorite one, but I like that. I like the 0.8, 0.9 as well. I think that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
A clean one is obviously the 14-15 shirt. But I don't have an outright favorite one, but maybe it's actually the one that I'm wearing right now, the 10-11. That represents something special for me.
I think with me it has to be this kit that you can see over here, that the one that the 8-9, the 2008-2009 kit, because I always just, whenever I think of that season, I always think about Eto'o with his
Yeah.
bald Eto'o, and it's just etched into my memory so well that I always like wearing the kit. I have it somewhere in the cupboard over there, and I also really like the away kit from last season, the black one with the nice blue and red outline.
Yeah.
I feel like it was such a clean design as well.
Agree.
I don't know if you heard about what Barcelona plans on releasing at the end of this month, but we should be getting a Ronaldinho throwback kit in 2 weeks. They will be releasing, I think, 1,000 Ronaldinho kits. I don't remember of which season. They were supposed to be released for the anniversary, for on the 30th of November.
Yeah.
Then they shifted it to the end of December, kind of like with the stadium as well, always being shifted. And they should be releasing 7,000 Ronaldinho kits for a normal kit price in maybe 2 weeks.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I can definitely send you the link afterwards. I can send you the leak so you can have a look at it.
Yeah, do so.
Yeah, from Kit, do you know Kit Archives, the website? They always release like these leaks and stuff like that for kids.
Yeah, I think so. I've heard about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I have to see if I can get one of those kits when they do come out, because I need to improve my Barcelona kit collection.
Yeah, definitely do that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Probably going to be different to get one though if it's only 7,000.
Yeah, you definitely have to be quick and probably have to put an alarm in the morning to see if I can get on there early.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're already at like 1 hour 20 minutes. I feel like we could talk about Barcelona for till the next day.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on to the podcast today. It was really, really exciting. Maybe we can do like a recap at the end of the season and see how things went, if there anything interesting happened. Maybe we do end up winning the Champions League. I feel like La Liga is looking pretty good at the moment. We've had a good resurgence. I think we were 5 points behind, or I think 5 points behind Real Madrid, and now we are 5 points in front.
I think it's 5 points, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've flip switched the whole thing. I think that if we continue playing at this level, I don't see Real surpassing us. I do feel like we're playing the better football right now. They did just get a new manager a couple of hours ago. I think they got Guardiola, the former player.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I don't know anything about his coaching style. I don't know if he's ever coached that level before. I believe not.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah. Also excited to see how long Hansi Flick is going to remain at the club. A good replacement. I mean, he does play a bit of different football, as you know. We've been hearing a lot of Fabregas from Como. He does play very interesting attacking football, but then his defensive line is more structured.
Yeah.
But he does play very dynamic football. I feel like he's a very interesting prospect for the club as well, since he knows the club really well.
Yeah.
And, was there for many, many years. I'm excited to see what the season brings for us Couleurs. And yeah, thanks for coming on today. I'm open for a podcast interview any other time. And to all of the viewers, be sure to check out his page. I don't know if there's anything you want to shout out. I'm giving you the opportunity now to do so. If you want to shout out your chats or anything.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It was very fun just sharing different perspectives about Barca, and I can tell that you follow a lot of the club as well. Get a lot of good knowledge. It's always fun to have like conversations about that and going a little bit back in time and looking how things ended up the way they are right now, what led to it. I love discussing those type of things, squad building and what's actually happening that most people don't really talk about. So you can follow me on Instagram, and if you follow me there, you get to know about the other things as well. So once more, thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So guys, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. The subscribe button should be somewhere down there so that you guys can see the next interviews that I've got coming. And I'll see you guys next time.